drawn in with my endpoints A and B, your midpoint would be halfway between those 2 points. Okay, meaning I can say AM is congruent to MB. And remember that first lesson we went over with those little dash marks? Okay, that means those two segments are congruent to each other. Okay, and I'll write it off to the side here. I can say AM is equal to MB. Okay, that's what happens when you have that midpoint. All right, so we have midpoint formulas just like we had distance formulas. So we have on a number line and on the coordinate plane. So on a number line, if we have segment AB with endpoints x sub 1 and x sub 2, then the midpoint M, you're going to take x sub 1 plus x sub 2 and divide by 2. So what you're doing is just, taking the mean, okay, taking the mean or the average of those endpoints. Okay, so you're going to add them together and divide by 2 to get that midpoint. In the coordinate plane, if you have a segment PQ with endpoints P at x sub 1, y sub 1, and Q, x sub 2, y sub 2, then the midpoint M, this will be your new coordinate. You're going to take x sub 1 plus x sub 2 and divide by 2, and then y sub 1 plus y sub 2 and divide by 2. So you're averaging your x's and averaging your y's. Okay, so going back and forth there. Now the order of your coordinates of the endpoints aren't important, so you can flip-flop x sub 1 and x sub 2. Okay, you're adding them together, so it doesn't matter which one comes first. As long as you put your x's in the x coordinate spot and your y's in the y coordinate spot. Okay? Make sense? Questions on that? All right, so example 1. The temperature on a thermometer dropped from a reading of 25 degrees to negative 8 degrees. We want to find the midpoint of these temperatures. So if I have my thermometer, I'm just going to draw a line. And we're going from 25 to negative 8. Okay, we want to find a midpoint of these. Since this is similar to a number line, we're going to use that formula. So we're going to average our two numbers. So we'll take 25 plus negative 8 and divide them by 2. Okay, so I have 25 plus negative 8 will give me 17 over 2. Okay, if you want to write it as that decimal then, you'll get 8.5 degrees. Okay, that would be that midpoint temperature. So between those two. Questions on the first one? Okay, example 2. We have a couple parts here using a number line again. We want to find the coordinate of the midpoint of each of these segments given to us. So letter A, we want to find the midpoint of AC. So we have A here and C here. So again, we're going to average those two coordinates. So we'll take negative 12, and we're averaging, we add them together. So we're going to add on where letter C is, which is 6, and divide that by 2. Okay, we have negative 6 over 2, which is equal to negative 3. Okay, that would be your midpoint. Next, letter B. We have segment BD, so from B to D, we'll take the coordinate of B, which is 0, add on coordinate D, 18, divide that by 2, that'll be 9. Okay, last one here is segment AD. Point A is at negative 12, and point D is at 18, so we'll add those together and divide by 2. I get 6 halves, or 3. Okay, again, number lines aren't too bad. Questions on finding the midpoint on a number line before we go into coordinates? So, example 3, we want to find the midpoint of segment ST if we're given the coordinates S at negative 6, 3 and T at 1, 0. Okay, so again, just like with the distance formula, I'm going to label these. So, point S, I'll label as X sub 1 and Y sub 1. And T is X sub 2, Y sub 2. Okay, that way, when I look up at my formula up here, which is kind of far away, up on your paper, I can just plug in my numbers again. Okay, so if I want to find this midpoint, I'm going to take X sub 1, which is negative 6, add to it X sub 2, which is 1, and then divide by 2. And yes, I'm going to add in this comma because I'm looking for a coordinate point. Then I can add together Y sub 1, which is 3, plus Y sub 2, which is 0, and divide that by 2. From here, I just need to simplify. Okay, so I have negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5 over 2. Then I have 3 over 2, and I can leave it as a fraction like that. Or if you want to put it into decimal form, you can, and you will get negative 2.5 and 1.5. Okay, so those would be your two answers. And it should look like an XY coordinate, okay? Parentheses and a comma between. What? Example 7? Well, we're gonna do another one that's a little bit more challenging for some people before that. Questions on this one? All right. Does everybody kind of understand how to use that midpoint formula?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go to example 5. Okay, so in example 5, it says the coordinates of the midpoint of segment JL is negative 1, 2. So this is the midpoint. You're given the midpoint already. You're not finding the midpoint of your two coordinates. We're also given one of the endpoints, L, is at 3, negative 5, and we want to find the other endpoint, J. Okay, so I can still kind of use that midpoint formula. So I am going to use the midpoint formula. If I label point L as X sub 1 and Y sub 1, that means point J is at X sub 2, Y sub 2, right? Because those are your two endpoints. So I can still plug those values into the midpoint formula. So X sub 1 is 3 plus X sub 2, so I'm going to add X sub 2 all over 2. Then Y sub 1 is negative 5 plus Y sub 2 is just Y sub 2 over 2. Now when I use this formula, what does it give me? Not J. When I use this formula on the front, what does it say it'll equal? You'll get your midpoint. I'm already given my midpoint. So I can set this equal to negative 1, 2, which I labeled as M up there for midpoint. Okay? So my x values here have to equal -1, and my y values here have to equal 2. Okay, so I can split this into two problems. My x's, so 3 plus x of 2 over 2, has to equal -1. Okay, it has to equal that midpoint of -1. And then my y's, -5 plus y sub 2 over 2, has to equal that value of 2. Does that make sense? Okay, so these have to equal that. These have to equal that. Your coordinates have to equal each other because you're solving for the midpoint, which was already given. So I can go through and solve this here. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, so I have 3 plus x sub 2 equals -2. You'll subtract 3 from both sides. You'll get x sub 2 is equal to -5. Same thing over here for y sub 2. Multiply both sides by 2. We have -5 plus y sub 2 equals 4 then. Add 5 to both sides. Y sub 2 will equal 9. So I can plug these points right here in for j. So j would have to equal -5, 9. Questions? All right, try number 6 in your groups, please. Same deal. You're given the midpoint, find the other endpoint. I'm gonna, what? Oh, that's fine. All right, number 6. So using the midpoint formula, setting it up, I have negative 8 plus x, we'll say f sub 2, over 2, and 6 plus y sub 2 over 2. That's equal to the midpoint, which is p negative 5, 10. Okay, again, your x values are equal to each other and your y values are equal to each other. Okay, so I have negative 8 plus x sub 2 over 2 is equal to negative 5. And I have 6 plus y sub 2 over 2 is equal to 10. Multiply both sides by 2 here. I have negative 8 plus x sub 2 equals negative 10. Add 8 to both sides, and x sub 2 will be negative 2. Ran out of room there. Okay, then over here, same thing. Multiply both sides by 2. We have 6 plus y sub 2 equals 20. Subtract 6 from both sides. Y sub 2 will be equal to 14. Okay, so my g value here, since I'm looking for segment EG, will be negative 2 comma 14. Did anybody else find an easier way to do this? Yeah, how did you do it?
You just, like, equals, with, like, for the x, you added 3 each time, so you got negative 2 right away.
Yep.
And then the y went up by 4, so you got 14 right away.
Yeah. So since P is this midpoint, right? From your end point, you can take your x value. How did I get from negative 8 to negative 5? Well, I added 3. Okay, add 3 to negative 5. Oh, I get negative 2. From 6 to 10, I added 4. Add 4 to 10, you get 14. You guys get that way? You can use either way. It doesn't matter to me. But don't do that if you're given the endpoints. You can't do that if you're given both endpoints. You can do that if you're given a midpoint and an endpoint. Okay, so like the one we did on the front, you have to actually average both of your points because you were given both endpoints. For this one, since you're given the midpoint, you can add to each and see what that next one will be. Questions? It's okay to ask questions, I promise. Okay. Then looking at the next problem, number 7, we want to find the measure of segment PQ, okay, this segment right here, if point Q is the midpoint of PR. So if Q is the midpoint of PR, what do I know about PQ and QR? They're congruent, or they're equal. Okay, I'm going to put these little dashes here. Okay, that means congruent. Now, I have to find PQ, which means I have to find out what Y is first. Okay, how can I set up an equation to solve for Y? What does congruent mean? Yeah.
You do 9y minus 2 equals 14 plus 5y.
Yes. So we're going to take 9y minus 2 is equal to 14 plus 5y. Okay, since that's the midpoint, those two segments are equal. So I can set their values equal to each other and then just solve for y. So I'm going to subtract here 5y. So I have 4y minus 2 equals 14. Add 2. I have 4y equals 16. Divide by 4. And y equals 4. that my final answer? No. I need to find segment PQ. So I need to plug in 4 for my y value here in PQ. So I have 9 times 4 minus 2. Okay, that is 34. That is your final answer there. Questions on how I solved number 7? All right, I want you guys to do number 8. Number 8, you're not given a picture, you need to draw the picture. Okay, so read what it's describing, label it, and then find the measure of YZ.
Yes. W, X, Y, and Z. There's too many letters in there. I hate reading these lines because they mess me up. Just find this is Y, Z, or X, Z,
Okay, then I stop after that.
What?
Okay, Y, if Y is in the plane of XZ, draw that. No. Now you can look at this side. So, X, Y. There we go. And then Y, Z. Okay, there's a lot of letters going on.
What did you ask?
Not sure how they did. Awesome. Yes.
Talk to me for like hours. It's fine. It goes to 30. You're adding 35. You gotta hurry it up. No, what?
Did you add?
Yes. Only 7. Why did your things change from 25 to 27?
Did everybody get the picture drawn? Here's my picture. And labeled. Since I know Y is the midpoint, I'm going to add in these dash marks there, showing they're congruent. Okay, since they are congruent, I can set them equal to each other. So I have 2x minus 3 is equal to 27 minus 4x. You should have had x is equal to 5. Yeah, x is 5. Okay, then I need to plug 5 in for x for yz here. Okay, so yz, we have 27 minus 4 times 5. Okay, yz will equal 7. Could I have plugged in 5 for 2x minus 3? Yes. When you're working with a midpoint, you can plug your x value into either because they're going to be the same measure. Okay, so if you thought, hey, it's going to be easier for me to calculate this than this for some reason, you can plug it into that one too and you should get the same answer since they are equal. Questions on example 8? Questions so far at all? Anything you need me to go back to? Okay, then at the bottom here, one last thing. Any segment, line, or plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint is called a segment bisector. Okay? So if you hit something or intersect at a midpoint, it's called a bisector. It splits it in half. Hence bisector, split in half. Okay? Nice new vocabulary word that we're going to get into more of chapter 2.
You have a quiz, guys.
Yeah, you have a quiz on Thursday, meaning tomorrow is a review day. Yep. Tomorrow is a review day.
How many questions is the quiz?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's in the 20s.
Alright.
Your assignment, again, labeled here at the bottom, it is in the book. Okay? Please make sure you can pull up the book. If you're still having issues, let me know, and I can figure that out for you. If you're unable to pull up the book at home because of internet situations, I do have printed out copies, but that is not just for everybody. Only if you cannot get it at home.
You see, we don't have a lot of assignments in the book, but the last three homework assignments.
Section 4 is not. I don't think section 5 is either. I can check. Nope. Section 4 and 5 are not in the book, so your next 2 sections will not be in the book.
Alright.
Yes.
Hey, look, my name is in here.